Hey, welcome back everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. So we're going to jump right in and start talking about the point of this video, and it is about my manual transmission and kind of why I chose it, what led me up to choosing it, and how I like it. But first, let's talk about how I kind of came across buying a manual C6. And I'd been looking for all types of different vehicles, sports cars, for my first sports car purchase. And of course, a Corvette was, one of the most reliable slash price worthy for value competitors out there. So I really looked at C7s actually for a while. And I actually had the opportunity to test drive several of them, and I fell in love with them. The interior was great. They drove phenomenally, and I really just enjoyed the overall appeal of them. However, I started, weighing my options, and I decided for my first sports car, I kind of wanted to start off at a lower price point. So I decided instead of buying a C7 and having a little bit of a payment per month, I decided I wanted to buy a C6 because I could pay in cash. And that was a huge reasoning for me purchasing this C6 platform. But I also knew that I probably wanted to get a manual in the C6. Now, my reasoning for that actually is because I had heard the A6 platform, which is the automatic transmission for the C6s, was terrible. I'd read on tons of forums that a lot of people did not like them, and I knew that if you were going to build off of the C6 engine platform, that you did not most likely want to have an A6 if you did not need one. Now, I had never owned a manual transmission vehicle before. I'd always owned automatics. I had driven tons of manual transmissions. I already knew how to drive them, but I kind of knew that I wanted a manual, especially because I had the opportunity to have a second vehicle. It's my second car. I have an Acura TL, as pretty much most of you know, and so that is an automatic, and it's a lot easier to drive in maybe some of the busier conditions when I'm on my phone and in traffic. But I would not trade owning this manual for the world. Now, I kind of talked about why I bought it. Now, I want to talk a little bit of how good it is, and it really is for the most part great. I love rowing through the gears. It's a really good transmission. As I kind of pout around town, it doesn't have any troubles. I do get my one kind of gripe, and it's called the marbles in a can. I've talked about it a little bit in one of my other videos, but is I get a lot of clutch rattle. Now, it depends on vehicle to vehicle, and I actually had a specialist look at it, and he said it's kind of normal. It's the slack in your clutch, and there's not a ton you can do about it. But I get quite a bit of clutch rattle at low speeds. I'm in a parking lot right now. My brother actually ran into the store, but I was, running through this parking lot, and I could hear at very low speeds, especially as the RPMs were lagging, this kind of clutch rattle. And it's the connection point of the clutch is what he kind of explained to me. And there's just not a lot they can do about it. It doesn't sound great. I don't love it, but it's just one of those things that you kind of live with this platform. But other than that, everything else is flawless. When I'm running through the gears at higher speeds, at higher RPMs, they just grab and they go, and I love the feeling. I've like I said, I'd never owned a manual, and I would not go back, especially if it's your second vehicle. I highly recommend buying a manual in any sports car. I know a lot of the new super nice exotics are starting to move over to the automatic transmissions, the dual clutches, and they're very nice. But there is something about that third pedal being able to almost be a part of the vehicle. And I love that aspect. I love that it pushes you. It makes you have to be a better driver. It's not the flick of a paddle. It's engaging and then moving the gear into what you want. You have to keep in mind what gear you're in. You have to keep in mind if you're downshifting, making sure that you catch, the RPM correctly, or it'll jerk around, downshifting correctly and rev matching. There's all types of different, heel towing around a corner. I can tell you that racing an automatic is completely different than racing a manual. After driving this vehicle, if you're kind of driving sporty and you're really kind of pushing into the vehicle, then driving a manual does take a lot more effort. It takes a lot more concentration, and you have to be a lot better of a driver. And so I think, it's one of those things that a lot of people do not understand until they actually own a manual. And that goes for me. I did not understand the concept of manuals until I actually own one. And again, I probably will never want to not own a manual. I've talked about going to the C8 platform, and I'm gonna be really bummed if they don't offer a manual. I'll still probably purchase one. That's really is still my end goal. But if they don't offer a manual, I may end up either maybe trying to keep this vehicle or finding another sports car that offers a manual, just to kind of get that experience, because there really is something to it. Like I said, I drove the C7. I loved it. Was a really nice A8 that they had in the C8, which is their automatic transmission, and it really did a great job. But after driving this vehicle, I now understand the emotion of the vehicle. I understand what it wants from me and what it expects of me. And that's just, it adds to the whole driver setting, the driver enjoyment. And so I know there's some down points if this is your only vehicle and you're in stop and go traffic. If you were in LA on the 405 and you were just sitting stop and go, this would kind of drive you nuts. Now, the clutch is very soft, and I have a super early kick point, which means I don't have to push all the way down. My kick point doesn't start till like almost 75%, but it's not a hard transmission to drive, but it would drive you a little bit nuts if you didn't have the ability to have an automatic in certain settings. But I wanted to, talk about that with you guys a little bit. I do really enjoy it, and I'll be talking a little bit more about it. There may be an upgrading of the clutch eventually. I don't know how much clutch life is left. I don't know how the first person drove it. I don't think he drove it super hard, but at the same time, I do think that I may end up needing to upgrade the clutch eventually. We'll see. I might have it checked out, but I really, like I said, to wrap up, I love this, and I highly recommend to anybody looking at a Corvette or any type of actually sports car segment. If you know how to drive a manual, or even if you don't, go and learn. They're just a ton of fun. I highly recommend anybody that enjoys cars to learn and then maybe even possibly purchase a manual car. I really am in love with it that much. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. If you like this video, you hit that like button. It would be much appreciated, and subscribe to join the family. I cannot thank you all enough for the support. You all have a great day and take care.